toying with me, for a mere level 6 demon core. Han Li raised his eyebrows, revealing a half-smiling expression. HMPH, if it were an ordinary level 6 demon core, we wouldn't care. But the demon core of a thunder whale is a different matter. Moreover, you questioned Brother Fan's demon core from the start, making us wonder about your intentions, said the taciturn son, an older cultivator with a somewhat sinister face, coldly. The thunder whale you killed took a long time to subdue, right? That's why the demon beast had exhausted most of its demon power from its core during that time. After you killed it, the demon core couldn't replenish its power, so how good could its quality be? It seems you haven't killed many high-level demon beasts, otherwise you'd know this rule. Han Li chuckled, neither confirming nor denying his words. Hearing this, the two cultivators exchanged glances, showing a bit of hesitation. Even if the matter of the demon core is true, how did you get here? Brother Fan clearly concealed this place with an illusion. Were you specifically looking for us? The white-bearded elder suddenly asked with caution. A mere illusion array is nothing to me. As for you all, it's my first time in this sea area, and I didn't come specifically for you. I'm in a good mood today, so I've told you everything. I'm not interested in answering more questions. The conditions I mentioned before remain unchanged. Is anyone willing to make this deal? I don't intend to stay here long. Han Li's face turned stern as he spoke. Seeing Han Li's bold tone, the few nascent soul cultivators in the stone pavilion felt a deep sense of fear. They didn't think he was bluffing and dared not speak recklessly. Finally, a delicate green-clad woman, her eyes flashing, asked after a moment, "From your tone, you don't seem to be a cultivator from the 5-Dragon Sea. Are you from Jin? Do you know Senior Xiang Zhai Li?" "You know Xiang Taoist." Han Li was taken aback, narrowing his eyes at the woman. He was quite surprised. "Senior Xiang once stayed on my island for a while and gave me some guidance in my cultivation, benefiting me greatly. Since you address Senior Xiang as an equal, are you also a senior of the nascent soul stage?" The green-clad woman stood up and respectfully saluted, her demeanor extremely courteous. Nascent soul cultivator. The others, who had been sitting calmly, were now startled, rising in surprise. The previously hostile cultivator Fan and the sinister old man showed signs of fear. "Since you recognize Xiang Taoist, there's no need to hide. When did you meet Xiang Taoist?" Han Li asked, ignoring the others and frowning at the woman. "About 200 years ago, when I hadn't yet formed my nascent soul. Without Senior Xiang's guidance, I might still be stuck at the core formation stage." The woman replied joyfully. 200 years ago, around the time Xiang Zhai Li and others discovered the spatial node in the 5-Dragon Sea, this seemed genuine. Han Li quickly judged her words to be true, and his expression softened. "Since you know Xiang Taoist, that's good. Take this demon core and bring me the sea chart." Han Li flicked his hand, and the rare demon core shot towards her. The woman joyfully caught it, and after expressing her gratitude, retrieved a light green jade slip from her storage pouch and handed it to him. Hanley scanned the jade slip with his divine sense and compared it with Xiang Zhai Li's previous messages, quickly finding the exact location of the spatial node. It wasn't far, only about a month's journey. Nodding in satisfaction, he said, "Good. Now I have a few questions for you. Listen carefully." With his nascent soul identity revealed, Han Li's aura intensified, speaking in an unquestionable tone. The woman naturally agreed quickly. Han Li's lips moved silently as he transmitted his questions, which she answered obediently. After listening, Han Li stroked his chin, deep in thought. The other cultivators didn't dare to breathe loudly, staying quietly in place, fearing to offend the nascent soul senior and bring trouble upon themselves. I've obtained what I wanted, so I won't stay here. You all continue." Han Li smiled, and with a wave of his sleeve, he disappeared in a flash of blue light, leaving no trace. None of the cultivators saw how Han Li left. They only sighed in relief after he revealed his identity. However, glancing at the thunder whale demon core in the woman's hand, they couldn't help but feel envious. She had merely exchanged a sea chart and a few words for such a rare demon core. What incredible luck! The green-clad woman calmly put away the demon core and smiled, "Fellow Taoists, since Senior Han has left, shall we continue?" "Lady Bai, there's no rush to exchange. We didn't expect you to have connections with a nascent soul cultivator. Truly impressive." The blue-robed scholar sighed with a bitter smile. "That was a long time ago. I was just a core formation cultivator, not daring to claim any deep connection. Senior Xiang merely gave a few pointers." The woman shook her head with a smile. "Even so, having such a connection with a nascent soul cultivator is a dream for many. But it's curious. Why are all these top-tier cultivators from Jin coming to the Five Dragon Sea? Is something big about to happen?" The cultivator fan pondered with a frown. "That's possible. But since nascent soul cultivators are involved, it's beyond our reach. One wrong step, and we might get crushed. Best not to inquire too much and risk offending them." The white-bearded elder warned with a chuckle. His words made the others' faces change slightly, and they all nodded in agreement. As for their true thoughts, only the heavens knew. While the Five Dragon Sea cultivators speculated about Han Li's purpose, he had already transformed into a blue streak, speeding across the sea thousands of miles away. Knowing from the green-clad woman's information that there were no nascent soul cultivators in the area, he discarded his last bit of apprehension and headed straight for the spatial node. With his current nascent soul stage, Han Li's speed was incredibly fast, though he maintained a moderate pace to avoid hastening the loss of his lifespan by disturbing the world's energy too much. After a month, he arrived at an endless sea of fog without incident. Looking at the mist, Han Li didn't hesitate and shot into it. After half an hour of flying through the fog, Han Li suddenly stopped. Scanning the area, he raised his hands and shouted, "Break." Two thick arcs of lightning shot out, striking the void. Thunder roared as the surrounding mist twisted and dissipated, revealing a small island with some buildings below. Han Li, pleased, muttered, Xiang and the others didn't deceive me. They left disciples here to guard the node. But if I were a century or two late, who knows if they'd still be here. As he spoke, 3 streaks of light flew from the island towards him, having noticed his presence. Han Li remained calm, hands behind his back, floating in the air. The lights revealed a woman and 2 men, all middle-aged and at the core formation stage. Seeing Han Li, they were overjoyed and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Senior Han. We've been waiting as instructed by our masters. Are you Xiang Taoist's disciples? Have we met before? Han Li asked, intrigued. We are indeed disciples of Master Xiang, who left us your portrait to recognize you, Senior. One of them replied respectfully. Good, you've done well. I won't let you go unrewarded, but I'll have my disciples replace you here soon so you won't be confined any longer. Han Li smiled. The 3 were overjoyed and invited Han Li to the buildings below. Han Li declined, stating he wanted to see the spatial node first. They quickly complied and led him to a part of the island. Chapter 1256, Spatial Node. After flying for over 10 miles, Han Li's divine sense detected an anomaly ahead. Without needing any prompting from his companions, he accelerated his pace. After a short while, they finally stopped, with Han Li narrowing his eyes at a massive, dim, gray light cluster in the sky, and he couldn't help but gasp. The light cluster was spherical and about half a mile in diameter. Though somewhat faint and indistinct, a closer look revealed it to be seemingly bottomless. The glow it emitted slowly rotated, giving off an eerie feeling that could draw one's mind into it. So this is the spatial node. Even though he was sure of it, Han Li exhaled slowly and asked, Yes, Senior. This is the node where our master and others entered. They spent great effort to set up a special seal to stabilize the entrance. This not only keeps the node stable, but also minimizes spatial fluctuations, preventing other cultivators in 5 Dragons Sea from noticing it, replied the middle-aged female cultivator among the 3 core formation stage disciples. However, her expression turned somber when she mentioned Xiang Zhili. It was clear that they were aware of the extinguishing of his soul lamp. I see. No wonder the spatial fluctuations here are so weak. Xiang Zhili and the others really went to great lengths. Han Li sighed, and then silently stared at the light cluster. The 3 core formation. Cultivators exchanged glances. Senior, there's something we need to tell you, said one of the male cultivators hesitantly. What is it? Han Li asked, somewhat puzzled. We've been guarding this place for over 200 years. Despite the seal, the spatial node started to exhibit brief disturbances about 100 years ago. These disturbances have been occurring more frequently and for longer durations. Initially, they happened every few years and lasted for a day. Now, they occur once a year and last for half a month, the male cultivator explained honestly. Really? Are you saying the seal can no longer stabilize the node? Han Li's expression changed slightly. I'm afraid so. At this rate, in less than 100 years, The node might become highly unstable even if it doesn't collapse. You may not be able to enter as easily as Xiang Zhili and the others did, explained another male cultivator respectfully. Less than 100 years, so short. Han Li's expression grew grim. It's just our speculation. We could be wrong, the female cultivator quickly added with a forced smile. Whether it's speculation or not, I'll find out in a few years. I plan to study this node and won't leave for now, Han Li said after some thought. The 3 disciples, naturally, did not oppose his decision and quickly agreed. Han Li then sent them back to the island, intending to stay alone by the light cluster for a while. As he stood under the massive light cluster, his expression changed repeatedly. The disciples' words clearly troubled him. If the node could only remain stable for 100 years, he had to enter it within that time frame. This felt too rushed, increasing the risk of failure significantly. However, if he missed this chance, even with over 1,000 years of lifespan left, he might never find another way to enter the spirit realm. Otherwise, why would Xiang Zhili and others have entered the node without hesitation once they found it? The remaining nodes he had information about were few and unlikely to be usable. After pondering for half a day, Han Li flew back to the island. On the island, the 3 disciples had prepared the largest pavilion for him, ensuring it was spotless. Pleased with their efforts, Han Li rewarded each with 3 treasures and several bottles of elixirs. They were naturally overjoyed and grateful. Han Li then used a long-distance talisman to contact Nangong Wan in the Starfall Sea, asking her to send a few reliable core formation disciples, including Tian Kinner, to him. Tian Kinner, having focused on formation techniques with his help, had surpassed even him in this area. Her expertise might be crucial for this task. During the following years, Han Li spent time each day observing the node and pondering its changes. A year later, Tian Kinner arrived with 4 core formation disciples. Han Li allowed the original 3 to leave, with his disciples taking over. Although Tian Kinner was still in the late core formation stage, the elixir he left her extended her lifespan significantly. Whether she could achieve nascent soul depended on her fate. Upon her arrival, Han Li immediately took Tian Kinner to the node, hoping she could find a way to strengthen the seal. Unfortunately, despite her exceptional skills, she could only come up with a method to gradually strengthen the seal, with only a 2 to 3% chance of success. With no better options, Han Li let her proceed. Gathering the rare materials needed for the formation, Han Li stayed on the island for 5 to 6 years. During this time, the node's disturbances continued to increase in frequency and intensity, matching the disciples' earlier observations. This made Han Li's initial excitement from his recent breakthrough vanish. After Tian Kinner set up a complex formation to reinforce the seal, Han Li considered searching for protective treasures and secret techniques to prepare for entering the node. However, before he could leave, a silver light appeared outside the fog sea, quickly approaching the island. The light revealed a stunning woman in silver robes, her eyes sparkling with a hint of silver light. She held a jade slip, which she scanned with her divine sense before smiling. The space node mentioned by the juniors of the heavenly demon sect must be here. She muttered, and then flew into the fog. The island, now heavily fortified by Tian Kinner's formations, activated its defenses as the woman approached. Trapped within, she was bombarded by lightning and ice attacks. Surprised, the woman quickly neutralized the attacks with a powerful wind spell. The commotion alerted the four core formation disciples, who flew out to confront her. The woman, annoyed, prepared to attack them when she heard Han Li's voice. "Feng Xianzi, please hold your hand. These are my subordinates following orders. I hope you can forgive them." "It's you." Feng Xianzi's expression changed, but she lowered her hand, refraining from attacking. "You're here. Have you advanced to the God transformation stage as well?" The woman from Silver Mountain, once the Ice Sea Sovereign and a 10th level Ice Phoenix, looked rather displeased. She had personally witnessed Han Li's advancement from mid-stage nascent soul to late stage, and now, after several hundred years, if he had advanced to God transformation, his fortune was truly extraordinary. After all, while there might be hundreds of nascent soul late-stage cultivators in this realm, those who could reach God transformation were extremely rare. "Heh heh, Fairy Feng, you have also advanced to God transformation. Although I don't know how you found this place, you must have come for the spatial node. If so, why not come down and discuss things with me? This matter might be one where we can cooperate," Han Li said with a light smile, transmitting his voice. With these words, the raging lightning and fire surrounding the vortex immediately dissipated, and the nearby barriers ceased. The four core formation cultivators who had flown in from below were immediately aware of the woman's true identity and quickly moved aside, showing their respect. The Ice Phoenix remained silent for a moment. Then, with a flick of her dark eyebrows, transformed into a ball of silver light and flew down to the island below. The four of Han Li's subordinates breathed a sigh of relief and quickly followed, leading the woman to the largest pavilion on the island. At the entrance of the pavilion stood a young man in flowing clothes, smiling and watching her. Isn't that the human cultivator whom she once hated so much? "Han Taoist, you're quite fast, having taken over this island ahead of time. Where is the spatial node?" The Silver Mountain woman asked coldly, landing about 10 yards away from Han Li. Han Li smiled and waved his hand to dismiss the four core formation cultivators, who then withdrew respectfully. Only then did he slowly reply, "Since you are already here, why rush? The spatial node is not far from here. After we have discussed things, I will personally take you there." "Why discuss anything with you? Do you really think that just because you've also advanced to God transformation, you can suppress me?" The woman's face was frosty, but her words revealed a hint of unease towards Han Li. "You seek the spatial node to ascend to the spiritual realm, which is the same goal as mine. Naturally, there's much we could cooperate on," Han Li responded calmly. Cooperate with human cultivators. The ice phoenix's lips curled into a slight sneer. You should be aware of the fate of others like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You have spatial divine powers that allow you to tear through nearby space and traverse freely. This will be very useful in the spatial node when facing the barriers between realms. My divine powers are also known to you and are by no means inferior. Besides, I have two supreme treasures that I believe won't drag you down. Our cooperation will be much more secure than acting alone. Otherwise, you have seen the fate of others. The old demon Chi, for example, entered another spatial node. Although he did not leave behind a soul lamp and his fate is unknown, the entrance there is far more violent. I can only imagine that the outcome is not optimistic, Han Li explained leisurely. Upon hearing this, the Silver Mountain woman's expression remained frosty, but her eyes flashed with silver light as she coldly said, "After advancing to God transformation, my lifespan has greatly increased. Even if I stay in the human realm for tens of thousands of years, it will be fine. There is no need to hurry to ascend to the spiritual realm, nor to cooperate with you." Is that so? But what about when your lifespan runs out? Do you think the spatial node here is so easy to find and will last forever? Hanley touched his chin, revealing a half-smile. What do you mean by that? The Silver Mountain woman's expression changed slightly. Nothing much. I just want to tell you that this spatial node will collapse and disappear in a little over 100 years. If you are confident of finding a better node in the human realm, you may disregard what I've said, Han Li said with a grin. Is it really that coincidental? Are you trying to deceive me? The Silver Mountain woman was momentarily stunned, but quickly showed a look of disbelief. Whether it is true or not, Fairy Feng can observe the node here for a while. I need to leave temporarily to search for methods to resist the barriers between realms. During my absence, a female disciple will guard the island. If you have any needs, just let her know. Of course, if you have time, any guidance you can provide would be greatly appreciated by my disciple, Hanley said with an easy demeanor, changing the subject. You're leaving the island. It seems you really plan to enter the node soon. Fine, I will stay for a while, given your sincerity. But if what you said turns out to be false, I will leave immediately, the Ice Phoenix said, somewhat surprised. But after some thought, she reluctantly agreed to the cooperation. Han Li was naturally pleased and immediately flicked his hand, sending a firelight through the air, which disappeared in an instant. It was a transmission talisman. He then casually chatted with the Silver Mountain woman. She seemed uninterested in conversation, merely responding briefly and then falling silent. Han Li didn't mind and tactfully refrained from speaking further. After a short while, a white light flew in from the direction of the spatial node, spiraled, and landed beside them. It revealed a slender woman in yellow robes with a beautiful face, Tian Kinner. Greetings, Master. Tian Kinner respectfully saluted Han Li and then stood to the side. This is your direct disciple. Oh, she actually has the dragonian body. The Silver Mountain woman's expression changed upon scanning Tian Kinner. Fairy, you noticed. My disciple possesses this constitution, which is both a blessing and a curse. I've heard that the Ice Phoenix clan's innate cold essence can cleanse the marrow and balance the yin and yang, which might be of great help. Could you provide a few drops to see if it can help her overcome this limitation and reach the Tao? Han Li smiled and said. Although Han Li hadn't mentioned Tian Kinner's dragonian body before, he had spent considerable time studying various records to find what seemed to be the only potential solution. With this opportunity, he naturally wanted to casually seek guidance for his disciple. HMPH, a few drops. How could I casually give away such precious innate cold essence? I might consider it if I'm in a good mood one day, the Ice Phoenix woman said with no courtesy. That's natural. Kinner, you've heard Fairy Fang's words. She will stay on this island for a while, so make sure to listen to her instructions, Han Li said with a hearty laugh, giving Tian Kinner a meaningful look. Hearing that there might be a chance to overcome her dragonian body, Tian Kinner's eyes brightened, and she eagerly agreed to follow Han Li's advice. The Silver Mountain woman cast Han Li a disapproving glance, but said nothing further. The following events were straightforward. Han Li personally took the Ice Phoenix to inspect the spatial node, and then stayed on the island for half a month. Sensing that the Ice Phoenix did not show strong aversion towards Tian Kinner, he quietly left the island. Outside the misty sea, in the high sky millions of miles away, Han Li traveled slowly as a blue rainbow. Han Taoist, are you really planning to cooperate with this Ice Phoenix to enter the node? A blue light flew out from his sleeve, enclosing a small cauldron, which then hovered in front of Han Li. The cauldron's phantom flickered, and the figure of the young boy appeared. Han Li looked at the boy in surprise. Over the years, aside from requesting some materials and elixirs, the boy had rarely shown up. Now he suddenly inquired about this matter. What could be the reason? Indeed, I plan to cooperate with her. Her spatial divine powers will be very useful when entering the spatial node, Han Li replied calmly. That's true. Although the Ice Phoenix is not of true Phoenix bloodline, she has inherited some spatial divine talents. Her help will indeed make traversing the spatial node more secure. However, before you leave the human realm, shouldn't you lift the restrictions on me and release me from the cauldron? Have you forgotten this matter? The boy acknowledged Han Li's words, but then changed the subject. I haven't forgotten. But Tian Lan, since I've given you the remnants of the Golden Palace Jade book, shouldn't you provide me with some answers after all these years? Han Li said with a neutral expression, bringing up the matter of the jade pages. I have indeed comprehended part of the talismanic path from the remnant pages, but whether it is correct I cannot guarantee. Also, it cannot be demonstrated in the human realm due to its thin spiritual energy. If you are certain you want what I have understood, let me know, the boy said, frowning. I certainly want it, and I plan to retrieve the Golden Palace Jade book. If we reach the spiritual realm, I will study it further myself, Han Li replied calmly. Since you say so, Han Taoist, please proceed. The boy did not hesitate, stepping on the cauldron and flipping the lid to reveal a small gap. With two soft pops, a yellow and a green light flew out from the cauldron and were caught by Han Li. One was a yellow wooden box, and the other was a piece of green jade. Chapter 1258, Sweeping the World. As soon as the wooden box was opened, inside lay a fragmentary jade tablet. The green jade slip, upon a mental scan, contained annotations on the jade tablet's content. Each word was filled with mystery, and while immediate comprehension was impossible, it was certainly reliable. Han Li took both items and smiled faintly at the boy. "Since you have done this, I will keep my promise and begin to sever your soul from the void heaven cauldron using secret techniques. However, this process will likely take several decades, so you should not be too anxious. Naturally, as long as I can restore my true form before you ascend, it will be fine." The boy seemed satisfied with Han Li's promise, and after speaking, his figure flickered and vanished. Han Li pondered for a moment before opening his mouth, emitting a stream of azure mist that enveloped the small cauldron. In the mist, the cauldron rapidly shrank and was swallowed in an instant. Almost simultaneously, the nascent soul, which had been meditating inside Han Li, suddenly opened its eyes. With a wave of its hand, a small azure cauldron appeared before it. The nascent soul then tossed the cauldron ahead, and with a series of hand gestures, dense azure spiritual light erupted, enveloping both the cauldron and the nascent soul, obscuring them completely. Han Li's expression remained calm as he accelerated his flight, vanishing into the horizon in no time. Soon after, a mysterious cultivator began appearing in various cultivation regions across the human realm, collecting rare treasures and secret techniques. These items were either related to spatial divine powers or had strong defensive abilities. However, this mysterious cultivator had high standards and rarely made a move. Moreover, his actions were swift and clean, and every time he appeared, his appearance, shape, and attire were different. Whether buying or discreetly removing restrictions, he was impossible to trace. The only thing known to the informed cultivators was that this person's divine abilities were unfathomable, rendering even nascent soul cultivators helpless. Fortunately, this mysterious cultivator only targeted treasures and at most severely injured opponents, never causing harm to people. Therefore, while sects and forces lamented the loss of their treasures and techniques, they feared the cultivator's astonishing abilities and dared not make a fuss or investigate deeply. They could only lament their misfortune. For ordinary cultivators, this mysterious figure was a complete unknown. Time passed year by year. 70 years later, atop an unnamed peak on the Tian Sha continent, the mysterious cultivator stood on a rock, staring impassively at two elders glaring at him from the sky. At this moment, he appeared as a middle-aged scholar with 3 strands of long beard and a jet-black robe. The two elders were at the early and mid-stages of nascent soul, respectively, representing the highest level of cultivators on Tian Sha continent. Whoever you are, if you have any sense, quickly return the stolen golden shoe ring. You must be at least a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator to have infiltrated our sect and stolen the treasure. Why engage in such despicable acts? Said an elder with thick brows, speaking harshly. The opponent's speed wasn't too fast, so after some pursuit, they caught up. However, the cultivator was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to discern his cultivation level. This puzzled the two elders, who did not immediately act but tested him with their words. The mysterious cultivator's gaze flickered, and he raised his hand, sending an object flying toward the speaking elder. The elder, taken aback, instinctively reached out and caught the item. It was a storage bag. The elder's expression showed a hint of confusion. The golden Shuo ring is of great use to me. The spirit stones in this bag should be sufficient for me to purchase it, the mysterious cultivator said expressionlessly, with a slightly hoarse voice. Preposterous. The golden Shuo ring is the treasure of our sect. No matter how many spirit stones you offer, we will not sell it. The elder, initially shocked by the quantity of spirit stones in the bag, became enraged upon hearing the latter part of the statement. Then I cannot comply. I will not return this treasure, the mysterious cultivator said calmly. HMPH, then you should leave your life behind as well, said the other elder with hawk-like eyes, his tone suddenly turning cold. He opened his mouth, and a red beam shot out, appearing above the mysterious cultivator's head. Seeing that the opponent refused to return the treasure, the mid-stage nascent soul cultivator acted without mercy. An astonishing scene followed. The mysterious cultivator did not move any of his treasures. Instead, he merely waved his hand, and circles of gray mist appeared out of nowhere, rising upward. The red beam was swept by the gray mist and immediately shattered, revealing its true form. It was a small red sword, several inches long, gleaming with a cold light. At this moment, the small sword spun continuously within the gray mist, seemingly losing its power. The elder who released the sword was shocked and angry, realizing that he had lost mental connection with it. The elder with thick brows, noticing something was wrong, immediately shouted and waved his sleeve, producing a golden square object. As soon as it appeared, the object expanded into a golden brick several yards long, which then plummeted towards the mysterious cultivator like a small mountain. The mysterious cultivator merely gave a soft exclamation and then flicked his other hand in a slow arc above his head. With a puff, a thicker gray mist surged upward and collided with the golden brick. The mist only wrapped around the surface of the golden brick. The treasure's spiritual light dissipated, and its size rapidly shrank, losing control and tumbling. The mysterious cultivator reached out and pulled the golden brick and red sword from the air, making them fall directly into his hands. The hawk-eyed elder became anxious, and without thinking, reached into the air. A white hand appeared below, which then closed into a giant palm, slamming down with the intention of crushing the mysterious cultivator. However, The mysterious cultivator only flicked his finger towards the sky. A flash of golden light, and a golden sword chi sliced through the giant hand, splitting it in two and causing it to vanish into white light. The hawk-eyed elder's face turned pale at the sight. Only then did the mysterious cultivator weigh the two treasures in his hands, looking at the two elders in the air and coldly stating, "Considering these two treasures as well, are you willing to exchange?" The two elders' hearts sank. They found it hard to believe that the opponent had taken their magical treasures and shattered their techniques in one encounter. The Gray Mist's divine ability was astonishing beyond belief. For a moment, neither dared to respond. The mysterious cultivator chuckled and suddenly tossed the treasures into the air. His spiritual light flickered, and he transformed into a blue rainbow, shooting away. The two elders stared in shock and quickly retrieved their own treasures, watching the retreating light in bewilderment. "Senior brother, should we pursue him?" After a long pause, the elder with thick brows asked hesitantly. "Pursue? With what? He clearly spared us. If we continue, we might provoke him," the hawk-eyed elder said helplessly. "But the golden Shuo ring is a precious treasure of our sect. If we lose it just like this, we won't be able to explain it to the sect," the elder with thick brows said with reluctance. "What is there to explain? We are outmatched in terms of divine abilities. The cultivation world is always about the strong prevailing. The golden Shu ring was not originally from our sect, but was taken from another sect by our ancestors. Now that it has been taken away, we can only consider ourselves unlucky. Let's return. We need to maintain our strength to support the sect," the hawk-eyed elder said with a bitter smile, then transformed into a red light and left in the opposite direction. The elder with thick brows sighed, and after a moment, followed with a flash of light. Far in the high sky, after flying several thousand miles, the mysterious cultivator suddenly stopped. The light around him dimmed with a crackling sound, and his form grew slightly, his face changing to reveal a plain-looking young man. It was Han Li himself. At this moment, he flicked his sleeve, and a golden circular ring appeared in his hand. He grasped it with one hand and gave it a slight shake, causing countless phantoms to appear, incredibly mystical. Not bad. In terms of defensive power, this treasure should rank among the top 3 of those I have obtained recently, Han Li said with a satisfied smile. "It's about time. Han Taoist, you should return soon. If the spatial node collapses suddenly, you will regret it," the boy's voice came from Han Li's sleeve, lightly laughing. "I don't need your reminder, Tian Lan Taoist. I am already preparing to return. Over the years, although I have acquired some treasures and techniques, I am not satisfied with most of them. While some have great reputations, they are somewhat overrated. They might not be of much use in the spatial node." Han Li's expression darkened, and his voice became somber. "That's not quite right. Ordinary ancient treasures from the human realm cannot compare to the 8 spirit measures. Having these treasures and techniques is better than having none. Besides, although you have traveled all over the human realm, you might have gained some insight from the Golden Palace Jade Book. These insights might even save your life in the future, the boy said leisurely. Maybe, Han Li said non-committally, but his hand, hidden in the sleeve, clenched unconsciously before loosening again. What Tian Lan beast had transformed into, as the boy did not know, was that Han Li's greatest gain over these years was not the treasures and techniques he collected or the insights from the Golden Palace Jade book, but something else. Over the past several decades, Han Li had regularly consumed a dragon scale fruit from his storage bag. His physical strength had long exceeded the limits achievable by human cultivators. When he first transplanted the dragon scale fruits to the Devil's Fall Valley, the humanoid puppets initially delivered this fruit, among other spiritual medicines, to the mustard seed space. Han Li didn't consume a fruit every day, but rather took one every half-month. Although the fruit's medicinal properties were mild, if not thoroughly absorbed and refined each time, the accumulated effects over time would make it difficult for even someone who had cultivated the Ming-Wang decision to its third layer to bear. The daily consumption requirement mentioned by the Golden Cursed King was naturally due to the more robust physique of the dragon race compared to ordinary beasts. During his seclusion, Han Li had focused on breaking through to the transformation stage, so he only refined the fruit intermittently. After 10 years of consuming the fruit, he ceased and devoted himself entirely to cultivating the Azure Origins sword art. Before heading to the 5 Dragon Sea, he had filled a storage bag with dragon scale fruits. Over the years, while traveling throughout the human realm, he consumed the fruit and simultaneously practiced the bone tempering art that had come to him by chance. To his astonishment, the bone tempering art complemented the dragon scale fruit extraordinarily well, and what had seemed a difficult technique to cultivate rapidly progressed, achieving several layers in just a few decades. Now, upon internal inspection, Han Li's bones had grown slightly thicker and exhibited a faint golden color, similar to the color of his skin when the Ming-Wang decision was in operation. In terms of strength, Han Li could easily lift 10,000-pound boulders with one hand without exerting any internal energy. Even more exciting for Han Li was the discovery that the dragon scale fruit seemed to significantly benefit his cultivation of the Ming-Wang decision as well. The art had progressed to the 4th layer during the same period. Han Li was astonished and speculated that the bone tempering art might be related to the Buddhist techniques from the sacred mantra of the Buddha, potentially even created based on the Ming-Wang decision. Otherwise, it wouldn't have seemed so complementary. With the Ming-Wang decision at the 4th layer, he could now cultivate several secret Buddhist techniques that, combined with the Ming-Wang decision, provided a considerable boost to his divine powers. Han Li, while consuming the dragon scale fruit, had naturally kept the void heaven cauldron hidden from the boy to avoid suspicion. Otherwise, the frequent appearance of the dragon scale fruit would have undoubtedly raised doubts. Speaking of which, it's odd that the Yuan magnetic divine light turns gray upon reaching full mastery. I initially thought it should exhibit 5 colors. Once perfected, it could harness the magnetic powers of the 5 elements and counter the treasures of the 5 elements. This divine power is rare and formidable. Even higher-level cultivators would find it difficult to counteract. The boy's voice suddenly changed the topic to Yuan magnetic divine light. I also didn't expect the Yuan magnetic divine light to turn out so inconspicuous. It originally displayed the 5 colors. Only after reaching full mastery did it change. Han Li rubbed his chin, equally puzzled. This had been a question in his mind for years. Now that it was brought up by the boy, he couldn't help but ponder. This technique is a unique creation of the cultivators of this realm. Any anomalies are not surprising, the boy said with a smile. That makes sense. As long as the divine power remains effective, a change in color is inconsequential, Han Li said with a faint smile after a brief pause. It's best if you think so. It seems you're planning to ascend to the spiritual realm soon. In that case, I will no longer accompany you back to the 5 Dragon Sea. We'll part ways here, the boy said as a blue light shot out from Han Li's sleeve and hovered in midair, revealing the small void heaven cauldron. With a clear ringing sound, the cauldron's lid opened slightly, and gray mist flew out, transforming into a figure several feet tall. Have you been able to leave the void heaven cauldron? I thought there was still some time left. Han Li was surprised and asked. Over the years, I wasn't idle within the cauldron. This last bit of confinement can no longer bind me, the boy said with a smile, appearing rather satisfied. I see. So you plan to stay here. Why not return to the Tianlan grassland or stay somewhere else? This Tian Sha continent is essentially just a large island and cannot compare to other fundamental cultivation regions, Han Li inquired, regaining his composure. I'm merely a backup plan of my spiritual realm's main body. Resources are of no importance to me at the moment. I chose to stay on this Tian Sha continent because I recently detected the presence of a similar being. Although not pure-blooded, I plan to meet with them, the boy explained calmly. Similar being. Congratulations are in order then, Han Li said, momentarily taken aback but soon smiling. Haha, I didn't expect to encounter a kindred spirit in the human realm. In that case, I won't accompany you further and will take my leave here, the boy said, clasping his hands in farewell before transforming into gray-white demonic energy and vanishing into the distance. The demonic energy quickly disappeared without any hesitation. Han Li watched the vanishing energy for a while before murmuring to himself, the presence of such a demon here suggests the future won't be too peaceful. But what does that have to do with me? After a long pause, Han Li's azure light flashed, and he transformed into a blue rainbow heading away. 2 years later, at the mist sea of the 5 Dragon Sea, a blue rainbow shot from the sky and vanished into the mist. When Han Li's long cry echoed above the island, several figures emerged, and more than a dozen cultivators appeared. Han Li was taken aback and his eyes flashed coldly. However, when he saw a familiar and graceful figure among them, his expression softened, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. "Dear, you're finally back." The figure flew in front of Han Li with a smile that made the flowers pale in comparison. The figure was none other than his partner, Nanggong Wan. "Yes, I'm back. But Wanner, why are you here on the island?" "I was planning to return to the Chaos Star Sea in a while," Han Li said with a smile. "I was worried about the spatial node, so I came to check. Moreover, I arrived here several decades ago." Nanggong Wan replied with a charming smile and a hint of reproach. "Several decades ago? Didn't I just leave the island not long ago?" Han Li said with a wry smile. "Indeed. As soon as you left, I arrived. I even met with Feng Taoist," Nanggong Wan said with a smile. "You've met the Ice Phoenix?" Han Li asked in surprise. "Of course, and we quickly became friends," Nanggong Wan said with a hint of mischief. Han Li was left speechless. "All right, let's talk about it on the island," Nanggong Wan said, glancing around. Han Li agreed, and together they flew down to the island's pavilion, surrounded by the other cultivators. As soon as they sat down, Nanggong Wan waved her hand to dismiss the other cultivators, leaving only Tian Kiner standing aside. "Kiner, how is your dragon roar body?" Han Li asked, glancing at his female disciple with concern. "Thanks to Master's guidance, the dragon roar body has been completely resolved with the cold essence from Senior Feng. I am now planning to attempt to condense the nascent soul," Tian Kiner said gratefully. "That's good. Your opportunity is your own fortune. It's good that my efforts were not in vain," Han Li said with a smile. "Nanggong Wan, please invite Feng Taoist here. Let her know that I have returned and have important matters to discuss," Nanggong Wan instructed gently. "Understood," Tian Kiner responded promptly and left the hall. Han Li looked at Nanggong Wan with a questioning expression after Tian Kiner left. "I heard that you've been searching for ways to deal with the dangers of the spatial node. Have you found anything useful?" Nanggong Wan asked with a concerned gaze. "Although I haven't found anything particularly useful, I did find some things, though they are somewhat disappointing," Han Li said, shaking his head and looking slightly somber. "In that case, it seems you will need to join forces with Feng Taoist to increase your chances of success. Also, don't worry too much about the treasures. With the 2 celestial treasures and the Yuan magnetic divine light perfected, you are already unparalleled. Besides, I happen to have a defensive heavy treasure. You should take it and refine it," Nanggong Wan said with a furrowed brow. "A heavy treasure? What is it?" Han Li asked with curiosity. Nanggong Wan was about to explain when a sudden sound of footsteps was heard outside the hall. A silver-clad woman silently entered. It was the Ice Phoenix. "Feng Taoist, please take a seat. We were just discussing how to join forces to enter the node." Nanggong Wan greeted her warmly with a smile. Chapter 1260. The 6 Ding Heavenly Armor Talisman. "Form an alliance. When did I agree to join forces with him?" The silver-clad woman glanced at Han Li, then took a seat on a chair, SPE a KING Chinese letter LY. Friend Feng, you jest. That spatial node is so dangerous that entering it alone offers almost no chance of survival. Over the years, haven't you also noticed the instability of this node? It's likely on the brink of complete collapse, Nangong Wan replied with a smile, unfazed by the silver-clad woman's indifference. It is possible to enter the node together, but I have one condition. Only if he agrees to it will I be willing to cooperate, the silver-clad woman said, casting a strange look at Han Li. What condition? Do tell, Han Li asked, his curiosity piqued. We must set mutual restrictions before entering. If one party encounters danger and the other fails to fully assist, neither will be able to leave the node alive. Only under such conditions will I feel secure working with you, the silver-clad woman said, her gaze steady. Fine, I agree. If we proceed this way, Han Li will also feel reassured. Han Li replied with a smile. The silver-clad woman seemed taken aback by this response, scrutinized Han Li again, and said coldly, "It's good that you agree. In that case, I'll need to leave for a while to make some preparations. The spatial node should last at least another 30 years. I will meet you here on the same date in 30 years. I hope you won't back out then." With that, the silver-clad woman stood up and walked out, not seeking Han Li's opinion. Han Li frowned but said nothing. Nangong Wan followed her out, seemingly to have some private words with her. After the two women left the hall, Han Li sat on a chair, contemplating the silver-clad woman's proposal. After a short while, Nangong Wan silently re-entered. It seems that in 30 years, my husband will truly be leaving, Nangong Wan said, her beautiful eyes showing a hint of reluctance and her expression somewhat gloomy. I'm not worried about myself. My main concern is that once you leave and the spatial node collapses, even if you advance to become a deity, how will you ever reach the spirit realm? Han Li sighed and asked with furrowed brows. That's not a problem. There are many spatial nodes in the world, not just this one. I have already taken the rebirth water, and if I advance to become a deity, my lifespan will exceed that of others by far. Over such a long time, I'll find another node in the human realm, Nangong Wan replied gently, her red lips parting. She then moved closer to Han Li and slowly nestled into his embrace. Han Li held her delicate, seemingly boneless body, inhaling the faint, ethereal fragrance she emitted, feeling a deep sense of enchantment. Neither spoke further. They simply stayed close together, their shadows on the ground merging as if they were one. By the way, Wanner, what defensive treasure were you referring to? After an indeterminate time, Han Li gently patted her fragrant shoulder and asked, "Do you remember the golden box we found in the underground cave during the blood trial?" Nangong Wan reluctantly left Han Li's embrace, adjusted her palace dress, and spoke softly. "The golden box. Oh, I certainly remember that," Han Li said after a moment of thought. The blood-forbidden land back then was actually the hidden dwelling of an ancient cultivator. The golden box contained a token to enter the tall treasure pagoda in the center of the area. However, to enter this area, one must be at the late-stage nascent soul realm to ignore the strange suppression of cultivation outside. After I successfully advanced to the late-stage nascent soul, I went to the UA kingdom to enter the pagoda and obtained this ancient cultivator's teachings. Additionally, I discovered the remains of another cultivator in a certain area of the pagoda. Clearly, this person was unaware of the dangers here and ventured in without the token, resulting in his death. The treasures found on the remains were extraordinary, indicating the owner was a significant figure. Among them was an item of exceptional mystery, which I believe will greatly assist you in your journey to the node. So I brought it back, Nangong Wan said, then tapped her storage bag, producing a 6-colored radiant glow with a silver talisman inside. This talisman, Han Li noticed something familiar about it but couldn't recall what it was immediately. This talisman's origin and its powers are for you to see, Nangong Wan said, her eyes sparkling with a smile. She tossed the silver talisman into the air, then performed a hand seal, reciting an enchanting incantation. An incredible scene unfolded. The silver talisman hovering before Nangong Wan spun around and suddenly transformed into a silver light that enveloped her, creating a hazy silver shield. The shield's silver light flashed intensely, and a loud rumbling sound filled the hall. At first, Han Li paid little attention, but as the rumbling grew louder and more continuous, it filled the entire hall, with the surrounding spiritual energy being drawn in and becoming denser. Han Li's heart sank, and he narrowed his eyes. At that moment, multicolored spiritual lights appeared in the hall, converging towards Nangong Wan and quickly disappearing into the shield. The silver shield began to change unpredictably, layers of colorful light converging on Nangong Wan, becoming vividly bright. Soon, a distinct 6-layer shield took shape, thick and solid. 6 Ding Heavenly Armor Talisman. Seeing this, Han Li's mind was illuminated, and he exclaimed in surprise. 6 Ding Heavenly Armor Talisman. That's its name. Husband, you recognize this talisman? Nangong Wan asked, surprised, though she continued her incantations. The 6-layer shield transformed into a 6-colored battle armor, fitting closely around Nangong Wan, its dazzling light constantly shifting and strikingly beautiful. It seems impressive. Although I haven't personally used this talisman, I have read about it in a sect's records in the Great Jinn. The 6 Ding Heavenly Armor Talisman doesn't rely on the cultivator's own spiritual power, but rather attracts nearby spiritual energy to form its defense, Han Li said, his eyes glowing. The Heavenly Talisman sect's 3 great secret talismans were something he had long wanted to learn how to forge, but he had never found any clues. Now, he had actually obtained one. Was the remains from the Heavenly Talisman sect's elder who had entered the blood-forbidden land for this purpose. Han Li thought about it, but quickly dismissed the idea. He approached Nangong Wan and carefully examined the talisman's battle armor. The armor covered almost all of Nangong Wan's body, except for her limbs and head, its surface smooth and mysterious with subtly visible runes. With Han Li's current abilities, he could easily sense the formidable spiritual power within the armor, raising his brows slightly. It is indeed the heavenly armor talisman. However, according to the records, this talisman should have more power than this. Wanner, you're not using its full potential, are you? Hanley asked with a glint in his eyes. Of course not. I've only displayed 1/10 of its power, Nangong Wan replied with a gentle smile. Good. This talisman will indeed be very helpful for my journey to the spatial node. By the way, did you obtain the talisman's forging method from the remains? If so, that would be even better, Hanley suddenly remembered and asked eagerly. No, and there is only this one talisman. Nangong Wan shook her head. Forget it, I'm being too greedy. Having this talisman is already a rare occurrence, Han Li said, though he felt a bit regretful. He quickly laughed it off. Nangong Wan smiled warmly upon hearing Han Li's words, tapped the battle armor, which then disintegrated into the silver talisman again. She blew gently on the talisman, enveloping it in red mist and presenting it to Han Li. Han Li accepted the talisman without hesitation. In the following days, Han Li stayed on the island, spending every day with Nangong Wan in close companionship. Both knew that, whether Han Li could ascend to the spirit realm or not, this time together might be their only remaining chance to be together. Afterward, they might never meet again. So they fully immersed themselves in their relationship, staying inseparable. However, one day, 3 years later, while Han Li and Nangong Wan were enjoying tea and conversation on a picturesque small mountain near the misty sea, Han Li suddenly changed his expression, pulling out a white, misty jade talisman from his sleeve. The talisman, a long-distance talisman, spun and landed in his hand. Han Li examined the talisman and was astonished, then showed great joy. The talisman carried news from the fallen demon valleys, puppet that the Xuantian immortal vine had finally bloomed and bore fruit. A year later, in the fallen demon valley's inner valley, a blue streak of light flashed into a hidden small valley. Han Li remained in the inner valley for several months before the blue light left the valley, vanishing without a trace. Han Li stood under the glowing sphere, gazing upwards with a serious expression. Nangong Wan stood beside him in silence. The others were also quiet, seemingly waiting for something. This included Tian Kiner and Shi Jian, who had become the leader of the 1,000 Bamboo sect. Master, will Elder Feng really arrive today? If the seal isn't lifted before noon, it might be troublesome, Tian Kiner said softly from behind Han Li and Nangong Wan. Don't worry. Fairy Feng sent a message a month ago. She will definitely arrive today, Han Li replied without turning around. Hearing this, Tian Kiner fell silent and continued to wait. After a while, Han Li's brow twitched as he suddenly turned his gaze toward the sea mist. The others stirred in response to Han Li's action. Moments later, a pleasant, clear chirp came from the direction Han Li was looking. The sea mist roiled, and a giant, snow-white ice phoenix emerged. The phoenix's flight was unusual. With just a few flaps of its wings, it quickly reached above the crowd. A bright light flashed, and it transformed into a silver-robed woman who descended gracefully. "I'm not late, am I?" the woman said casually, her gaze sweeping over the crowd before finally settling on Han Li. "Of course not." Kiner lift the seal. "Fairy Feng, let's go aside and set up the restrictions," Han Li said with a smile, then moved swiftly into the thick mist with a burst of green light. The silver-robed woman raised her eyebrows slightly and followed as a silver streak. Nangong Wan stayed behind, watching the direction in which the two had disappeared, her face showing a hint of concern. At this moment, Tian Kiner directed several cultivators to take to the air. They flew to the giant, glowing sphere and arranged themselves in a peculiar formation. They then began to use various magical tools, such as array plates and array flags, to start lifting the seal. As time passed, the sphere's seal slowly weakened. The once dim and blurry sphere began to brighten and become dazzling, changing from a gray to a brilliant white, like a blazing sun. The blinding light made even a high-level cultivator like Nangong Wan squint and avoid looking directly. The cultivators responsible for lifting the seal, including Tian Kiner, had closed their eyes, relying solely on their spiritual sense to control their tools. At this moment, a large hand suddenly appeared on Nangong Wan's shoulder, and a deep voice said, "Still worried?" Nangong Wan was initially startled but quickly relaxed, turning around with a forced smile. Behind her, Han Li was smiling at her. "There is naturally some worry. However, pursuing the Tao is inherently against the heavens, seeking a thread of hope between life and death. There's nothing to regret. By the way, have you and Fairy Feng set up the restrictions properly?" Nangong Wan said with a sigh, then asked with concern. "The restrictions have been set, and they are the kind that only the person who set them see a N Chinese letter, ensuring that no one else can undo them. This way, I don't have to worry about her making any moves," Han Li replied with a wry smile. "HMPH, as long as you don't make any trouble behind the scenes, how could I possibly make any moves?" The silver-robed woman appeared behind Han Li in a flash, emerging from the void. "Fairy Feng, it's better not to use spatial divine abilities recklessly right now. It's best to conserve your magic power to deal with the dangers within the spatial node," Han Li said with a frown. "Rest assured, I know my limits." The ice phoenix seemed to have softened her tone, possibly due to the mutual restrictions, and her demeanor was much more relaxed than before. Han Li smiled slightly and said no more. He stepped forward to stand next to Nangong Wan and looked up at the sphere as it continued to dissolve. The silver-robed woman also fell silent. After a while, when the sphere was at its most glaring, a deep rumbling sound was heard. The white light receded, and the sphere suddenly transformed into a pitch-black hole, seemingly as deep as the abyss, with no light inside, like the mouth of a beast ready to devour. Han Li's heart tightened, and the silver-robed woman's eyes flashed with a strange light, but she did not hesitate to say, "Han Taoist, let's set off." The woman's entire body was enveloped in silver light as she slowly floated toward the black hole. Han Li twitched his mouth slightly. Then, with a wave of his hand, a Han Li appeared in front of him. It was the humanoid puppet. Without saying a word, Han Li raised a hand and struck the puppet's head. A pitch-black nascent soul emerged from the puppet's head and shot into Han Li's body. Han Li then lightly tapped the puppet, causing it to shrink and transform into a small wooden figure. At almost the same time, he flicked his sleeve, and two blue small cauldrons and a three-colored flame appeared, floating in front of him. "Wanner, these treasures are of little use for me to pass through the spatial node. You may encounter dangers in the human realm, and these items could be of assistance. Please take good care of them," Han Li said, waving his sleeve to send the treasures toward Nangong Wan. Afterwards, Han Li rose into the air and followed the ice phoenix into the black hole. Nangong Wan bit her lip and collected the humanoid puppet and other treasures, then looked at Han Li's retreating figure with a pale expression. At this moment, the ice phoenix stopped before the unfathomable black hole. When Han Li's green light dimmed and he appeared behind her, she finally asked without turning around, "Why not say a few more words to your wife? I'm not in a hurry to enter, so I can give you both a bit more time." Was this transformation of a divine demon showing a bit of human sentiment? "No need. If there are any words, Wanner and I have already said them. Now we just need to focus on passing through the node," Han Li said calmly, taking a deep breath. He then tapped his own forehead, and a green light flashed, revealing a green small cauldron. He lightly stepped, and a GREEN Chinese letter appeared, which spun and revealed a silver lotus beneath his feet. With another flick of his sleeve, a silver talisman shot out, transforming into a three-colored battle armor that adhered to his body. Following that, 72 golden small swords shot out, swirling around him. At the same time, Han Li's hands rotated, producing a golden ring and a small jade umbrella that he held in his palms. The silver-robed woman showed a trace of surprise but remained calm, shaking her shoulders to release several white lights that formed into crystal-long feathers. They swirled in the air and then descended to form a white curtain around the ice phoenix. The silver robe's spiritual light flowed, creating a miraculous pattern of 1,000 birds facing the phoenix. Most surprisingly, she also spat out a semi-transparent ice boat. The boat, initially only a few inches in size, quickly expanded to over 10 meters, positioning itself in front of them. This celestial boat, which I've refined with my cold essence over countless years, should protect us for a while and save us a lot of trouble, the silver-robed woman said, floating lightly onto the ice boat before turning back to say. Han Li didn't hesitate. He stepped onto the ice boat and stood behind the silver-robed woman, then said in a deep voice, "Since you have such a treasure, I'll lend my assistance to the fairy." With that, a vast gray light erupted from his back. A dark shadow appeared, forming into a miniature mountain about a foot in size, completely unremarkable. The ice phoenix was taken aback, but did not understand the nature of this treasure. As the mountain flew up from the gray light and settled on the ice boat, Han Li performed hand seals to activate it. The mountain emitted a large amount of gray light, enveloping the ice boat. Although the silver-robed woman did not know what this gray light was, she could tell it was extraordinary. Without further words, she activated her spiritual sense, and the ice boat rose a silver light shield within the gray light. Then, with a swoosh, it shot into the black hole and disappeared in an instant. The crowd below the black hole stirred. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sky, not blinking even once. However, after a short while, most of them began to feel disappointed. The black hole, just like at the beginning, showed no signs of change and remained calm and undisturbed. Tian Kiner, leave 2 disciples here to guard the place. The rest of you should leave. Staying here is pointless. Nangong Wan finally withdrew her gaze and calmly instructed Tian Kiner. Understood. Tian Kiner responded respectfully, then summoned 2 core formation cultivators to stay behind, while the rest followed Nangong Wan back to the small island. A month later, with no unusual occurrences at the node entrance, Nangong Wan again instructed Tian Kiner to seal the entrance with a formation and leave a few disciples to guard it. The rest of the group returned to the Chaos Star Sea with her. Han Li had not left any soul lamps for anyone, so no one, including Nangong Wan, knew whether Han Li had passed through the node and entered the spirit realm, or if he, like Xiang Zhai Li and others, had succumbed to the spatial storm and barrier forces and perished within the node. This was also one of the reasons Han Li did not want to leave behind any soul lamps. After all, having a glimmer of hope was better than having none for those close to him.